I am really excited that you are here with me today to talk about communication transformation. So, I am really just going to get us right into it right away so that we can get the most out of our time together. So, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you to get us started. All right, so here we are. Communication transformation. Let's rock it. Okay, so here we are, and we're going to get started. You probably see this big elephant in the room right here. And what I want to talk to you right now is that all of us are experiencing a big elephant in the room. No matter if you are sitting here with me today or if somebody is across the pond, if they're, in Australia, in South America, wherever, we are all experiencing the same elephant in the room. And that is basically this, that we are all experiencing a global crisis that has dramatically changed how we are living. We are seeing that really before it was a lot easier to push things under the rug, but now that's really no longer the case. Really understanding that there's no waiting until it's over. It's really figuring it out right now. And this is in relation to the way that we communicate as well. There are a lot of things that we may have let slide beforehand. And now we're in such tight quarters. We're having more, more difficult conversations, more, time to come back to conversations that maybe we previously had. And what we're just seeing is that they have to come to the forefront now. They're no longer things that can just rest and be talked to later on. They're things that need to be addressed right now. So this is really the big elephant in the room for all of us. And the real problem, though, here is just that we can't stop speaking and reacting in the same ways. We can't stop thinking the same thoughts and having the same fears and having the same doubts and the same worries. And because we're stuck really here in this pattern, we don't really believe that our interactions at home, our interactions at work, our interactions with our employers, with our employees, with our friends, with our children, with our partners, that it can look any other way. Especially because this is the way that we have been interacting for a while, right? And so this is really the real problem. The piece, though, that we don't think about is what this issue of interacting in ways that we don't necessarily respect, or interacting in ways that we don't leave a conversation feeling good afterwards, but we feel more depleted afterwards, what it's costing us. And so right now it's costing us energy, right? It could be costing you energy in the sense that you are up too many days and nights really worrying about what to say, how to say it, the constant thoughts about what would happen if you did say something, right? The doubt, the questioning about yourself and your relationships, and really just the constant mental chatter that goes on that can really exhaust us, right? So this problem is costing us energy. It's potentially costing money, right? In the sense that we buy books, we do courses, we go to talk therapy, we do counseling, we go on retreats, some people even try hypnosis, and nothing's really changed, right? Nothing really works. Our confidence, it can affect the way that we see ourselves. Maybe we give so much of ourselves over in our relationships, and we worry so much about the other people in these relationships that we lose sight of ourselves, right? So we worry so much about how another person is going to react to what it is that we say, or the complete opposite of that is that we don't worry at all and we just say whatever it is that's on our mind, though we're still losing a sense of ourselves in those moments, right? We forget ourselves along the way. Another piece, really that this is costing you, I would say, is freedom and fun, right? So feeling stuck and trapped in the same cycle day in and day out has taken away any sense of freedom. So everything feels so serious, or it's really hard to access that lighthearted banter that you used to love so much, or just like the ease and the flow of how you used to interact, right? It could also be costing your health, right? By interacting in ways that deplete us rather than lift us up. It can create a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm in our life. Our blood pressure can go up. We're not able to sleep through the night. We're constantly worried and filled with anxiety, right? We are so consumed by maybe a discussion that we had, or an argument that we had, or a conflict that went on, that we can't even eat. Sometimes we can't eat right, we can't exercise, and everything may be turning into either, a lot of tension, a lot of arguments, a lot of misunderstanding. There can just feel like there's no peace, there's no ease, right? Nothing seems to be relaxed, nothing feels calm, everything just feels really, really hard. It can also be costing you, your relationships within your immediate family. It's possible that if you're having difficulties in your relationships, in your romantic relationships, that your children are starting to notice, and it's starting to feed into their lives and feeling uncertain, or maybe feeling anxious. Or it's possible that, you are you're working so much, and it's taking you away from your immediate family. And so when you get back home, the way that you're interacting with them isn't how you want to, right? Maybe you lash out more, or maybe you're a bit more impatient, or it's the opposite. There's things going on at home, right? And you get to work and you have no patience, or, you interrupt people, or you try to fix everything, right? So there's so many ways that this can show up and deplete us. And I want to just take a minute for you to understand what these states of suffering are, right? These are all states of suffering. I use the word suffering, it's a big word, but really what suffering means is this: it means exhaustion, it means overwhelm, it means anxiety, it means fear, frustration, embarrassment, anger, sadness, loneliness, stress, guilt, shame. All of these are states of suffering, okay? And so I want you to take a moment now to just think about, how often do you spend in suffering, right? How many hours? Is it 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day? Maybe it's all day, all night long, right? And I'm just going to hang out here for a moment so you can just see the states of suffering. But if you think of suffering as anything that causes you discomfort, right? How often are you in discomfort during your day, right? And really be honest. Most people will say all day long, or definitely at night, or, I'm spending the majority of my time angry, or frustrated, or, feeling guilty, or just in constant stress, going, right? So there we are. So here's what I want to get into today. Today, I really want to make sure that you leave here with concrete actions that you can take right now in order to change the way that you are connecting with others and get it back on track, right? And before we jump into this, I want to, explain a little bit about why you should listen to me, in the sense of why I know what it is that I'm talking about. But this is what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to cover why we struggle with communication and the alternative to what you're doing now. We're going to look at how it's possible to change, even if you think it's too late. And we're going to look at why it only takes one person to change a conversation. Okay. All of these are really wonderful pieces for you to know. And I hope you're excited about finding them out, because I'm really looking forward to sharing them with you. So before I get into everything, I do want you to know who I am and how I came to this. And really, it doesn't make sense for you to listen to me unless you know that, why you should listen to me. So Yahoo ranked me as #2 communication coach in 2021. I've been teaching this work since 2015, and I've helped thousands of men and women find more calm and ease in their interactions, right? I am in an incredible relationship with a wonderful partner, and this relationship thrives because of this practice of communication that I'm going to share with you today. I teach this work. I love teaching this work. I have 2 little kiddos. And again, this practice is what makes it so that I truly am present with them, that I get to enjoy being a mom, and that all of the ups and downs of having a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, I can navigate easily, right? I am the best-selling author of How to Communicate Like a Buddhist, Talk to Yourself Like a Buddhist, and How to Meditate Like a Buddhist. And, like I mentioned before, I've taught over 60,000 people this practice, and it works. So a little bit here, this is me in 1998. You can tell my hair is short. And this is where kind of everything began for me, in the sense that this is Mauricio. Mao and I, we met in college. I went to Bard College in the Hudson Valley, and we met the first night, and it was phenomenal. We got on so well, and it was like, boy meets girl, girl meets boy, fall in love, all of it right there that first time we met freshman year. And in this relationship, I was extremely passive aggressive, very judgmental. I had a lot of insecurities. I really expected him to know what it was that I wanted and what it was that I needed without me being able to express that or to articulate that. I had this way of making everything the worst possible scenario or the best possible scenario. There was really no in between. And I was very reactionary. It was really difficult to have conversation because I was constantly thinking about what I should be saying, right? And it was exhausting. And though that was how I was in relationship, our relationship continued, and we had a really wonderful time. We were together for a very long time. We traveled a lot together. We went to, this is us in Italy for his brother's wedding. And, we went to the beach. I cut his dreads. He used to have dreads. And then after school, we settled in New York City together. So Mao is from Costa Rica. So his visa ended up running out. And so then we had to do long distance. So we were doing long distance between Costa Rica and New York. And all of the issues that we had before in terms of our communication, they were just amplified that much more with long distance. And it really broke us down. And so I went out to Costa Rica because originally the plan was for me to move there and for us to really start our lives together. And I went out there, and instead we understood that we were going to have to grow separately, and that this was no longer the time for us to be together. So he took me down the river. He was a whitewater rafting guide and kayaker. We had a phenomenal time. And then we came back together, decided, okay, we really believe that the universe is going to bring us back together at some point. And it did. 4 years later, the universe brought us back together. We connected at a bar in New York. And that was really where we re-met one another. We literally said, hi, I'm Cynthia. He said, hi, I'm Mao. And we began again. And it was phenomenal. And we also talked a lot about our relationship and what didn't work, and how so much of it had to do with miscommunication, misunderstanding. And we vowed, okay, we want to be in each other's lives again. Let's be in each other's lives again. And then 4 months later, I was on the corner of 49th and 10th. It was Fashion Week. I was out with my best friend, Ingrid. And I got a call from his sister-in-law around like 11 at night. And I thought it was kind of weird. I turned to Ingrid and I said, okay, should I call back? She said, yes, call back. So I called her back, and Mao's brother answered, Macho answered, and he said that Mao had died, that Mao is dead. That moment, I dropped to my knees. I was completely empty. I didn't believe it. It was surreal. I really believed that he would find his way out. He got caught in a swell and he drowned on the river. And this moment for me was just, it was like I was a blank canvas, right? That's how it really felt. Like everything that was before wiped away. I was empty. There was nothing. The person who knew me, the most in the world was now gone, and I was just empty. And so what I wanted somebody to come and take away all this pain. I wanted somebody to come and save me. And, his family was wonderful. My family was wonderful, our friends, and nothing helped, nothing worked. And I realized that I was going to have to figure it out on my own. If I wanted to enjoy living here, I was going to figure out really how not to die along with Mao. So I started taking workshops. I did seminars. I went to therapy. I read tons and tons of books. I worked with coaches and all of this. And what I was starting to understand was that communication was a really big piece of this, though I wasn't getting what it was that I needed from all of the wonderful information that I was receiving, right? A friend of mine then sent me a email about a meditation and writing workshop at the Shambhala Institute when I lived in New York. And I never meditated before. I didn't really know much about Buddhism, but I was trying everything and I went. And that weekend completely changed my life, because what I learned that weekend was I learned the elements of right speech in Buddhism. I learned how to meditate, but I also learned the elements of right speech in Buddhism. And those are to tell the truth, don't exaggerate, use helpful language, and don't gossip. And so I thought to myself, this is it. This is what I have been really looking for. These are guidelines. This is a way for me to change the way that I interact with the world, the way that I interact with others, and the way that I interact with myself. And so I woke up the next morning and I was like, awesome. But how in the world do you do this? How do you tell the truth? How do you not exaggerate? How do you use helpful language? How do you not gossip? So I turned everything kind of into this lifestyle experiment. And that is how I began this practice. This is how this practice that I'm going to share with you today really came into being. And I started practicing changing the way that I was interacting with myself and with others. And my whole world opened up. So Einstein says that one of the most important questions that you can ask yourself is the world a friendly place? The world for me before was not a friendly place. It was not a friendly place before Mao passed away. It was not a friendly place after Mao passed away, but it has become a friendly place because of this practice of intentional communication, which is what I'm going to share with you today. Okay. And so I say this because I started practicing it and the world opened up. It was like the sun was like brighter. The sky seemed bluer. People were friendlier. I was friendlier. And all my relationships began to change because of it, and for the better. And so then I started writing about it. Then I started teaching it. And now over 60,000 people have been, working with this. And it's not just me, it works, right? It works for other people. And if you would have asked me 10 years ago, 11 years ago, if I would be in another relationship, like find love again, I would have said, no way. And also to be in a really thriving relationship, healthy relationship where I can express myself and ask for what it is that I want and need, and, have difficult conversations and not fear the reaction of things, or, no longer be passive aggressive or defensive and lash out. I would say, no way, that's totally impossible. But here I sit, right? So I know it's possible. And this practice, like I mentioned before, it just makes it easier for you to enjoy your relationships, right? This is within career as well. It makes it so that your relationships with your colleagues, with your employers, with your employees, that you begin to be present. So you get to listen and you get to understand and you get to have conversation and dialogue, as opposed to it being almost like a tennis match of reactions, one person reacting, another person reacting. You really get to come together to grow your business, to grow, community within your organization. So it hits everywhere. Okay. So I want to get into the first piece of this, is why we struggle with communication. Okay. So think for a moment if you've said something that you didn't want to say or that you wish you had and you didn't, right? Just think for a moment if you've done this, right? If anything has ever come out of your mouth and afterwards you thought, why did I just say that? Or I wish I hadn't said that, or I can't believe I said that. Or maybe you were in a position where you didn't say anything and afterwards you're kind of on your case for not saying anything, or why didn't I say anything? Or I can't believe I didn't say anything, right? these moments where things just kind of come out of our mouth happen because right now we are really just winging it, right? It's those moments where maybe you weren't really nice to someone, or you didn't welcome another person's perspective, right? That was different from your own. Or maybe you got angry or loud because, you were just frustrated, or maybe it's those moments where you keep all your emotion in and you get upset and you get passive aggressive and resentful. And all of that leads to just exploding, right? And this is what happens in our interactions. This is what happens in our relationships, right? Most of us are really just winging it, and we're going off of instinct. And we think that because we know how to talk, that we know how to communicate, but communication is not something that we are actually taught, right? And when we go off of instinct, what we're really doing is we're going off of our default reactions, right? We are relying on our default reactions. And to be human is to be reactive, right? And so default reactions can look like this, right? Most default reactions are lashing out, dodging, shutting down, just kind of your whole body just freezes in the moment and you can't access yourself in the moment. So you just shut down. Maybe you lie, maybe you take things really personally, you start making assumptions, you stop listening, you exaggerate, you can over-explain, you can defend yourself, okay? So I want you to just take a minute right now and think about the last time that you were in a difficult interaction and what you did, right? And it's possible, I'll say it's possible that you've done all of these, though likely it begins with one, right? So where did you go in that interaction? Like instinctively, what did you do? Because being able to identify this is really important, because this is your default reaction. So this is what happens every time if you continue to wing it, right? You will continue to exaggerate. You will continue to over-explain. You will continue to, get passive aggressive and shut down, roll your eyes and walk away, throw your hands in the air and be like, this is ridiculous, and leave, right? The way that you have been interacting up to this point is because that is instinctively where you go. There's nothing wrong with that, because we've never been taught anything different. But now you get this opportunity, which I'm going to share with you today, to choose a different way to interact, right? To transform your communication so that it doesn't look like what it has been looking like, which may not be helpful, right? So instead of winging it, what is it that we want to do? Instead of winging it, right? We really want to be intentional. We want to speak with intention. We want to be conscious. We want to be deliberate. We want to be in this knowing, or have a purpose for the reason why we're actually engaging and talking with people. There's a acronym that I really love, and it's called WAIT. And it's, why am I talking, right? Why are we talking? In these moments where things are happening so quickly that we're not even conscious of the reason we are speaking, right? We're not conscious of it at all. So it's really important that we become intentional with our language. And what that looks like, being intentional looks like being helpful. It looks like being deliberate. It looks like being conscious. It looks like being non-judgmental, being kind, being honest, right? And so, basically, if you answer yes to these questions, that you are speaking with intention. Is what I'm about to say kind? Is what I'm about to say honest? Is what I'm about to say helpful? And is what I'm about to say necessary? If you can say yes to all of those, then you know that you are speaking with intention, okay? With intention, though, like I mentioned before, there's purpose. So we have to have a purpose. We have to have a reason for which something is done. We have to have a reason for our communication. So it would be great right now if you could just take a minute and jot down for yourself, what do you think the purpose of communication is, right? What is the purpose of communication? Most people will say it's to share information. Other people say that it's to, express themselves and be understood. Others will say it's to create more connection. It's to create more intimacy. Yes, all of these things are true. They are all true. Though sometimes what happens when we filter them through this idea of, is it kind? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? Is it honest? They only maybe fit one of the boxes, or maybe they fit two of the boxes, but they don't fit all three. And so I'm going to challenge you right now to start to see or think of communication and the purpose of communication as to help yourself and other people suffer less. Remember those states of suffering that I mentioned before? We want to help ourselves suffer less. We want to help others suffer less. So what this means, first off, even just showing up in your conversations with this purpose, with this intention, could totally change the way that you're connecting. This means, though, that it is truly your responsibility to keep the integrity of the conversation intact. That means if you start to notice that it is going into hurtful territory, if it is becoming exaggerated, or if you are noticing gossip, or if you are seeing that or feeling really discomfort, that it is your responsibility in that moment to bring the conversation back to a place where it is helpful, where it is kind, where it is honest, and where the information or the communication is necessary, right? It becomes your responsibility to keep the health of the conversation intact. Because here's the truth. In interactions, the responsibility breaks down like this. You are only responsible for your words, your actions, your facial expressions, the way that you're using silence, right? Your body language, right? The other person is only responsible for their words, their reactions, their body language, their facial expressions, the way that they're using silence. What you both have in common is the health of the conversation. That is it, right? So you are constantly in a position to be able to identify when the conversation is taking a turn where it's no longer helpful, and you get to be the one to move it back. You get to move it out of the states of anger, out of the states of frustration, out of the states of stress, right? So that becomes your responsibility. So I want now to, for you to write down and finish the stems of these sentences. If I was 5% more intentional with my communication at work, ... right? What would that look like for you? What would that feel like for you? Or if I was 5% more intentional with my communication at home, what would that look like? What would that feel like, right? I mean, you can apply this to romantic relationships. You can apply this to your children, right? But I really want you to think about, and it doesn't have to be, oftentimes we think in these extremes. We have to do everything 100%, right all the time. I'm not asking you to climb Mount Everest, right? To climb Mount Everest, to get to the top, you have to practice, right? You have to take these little baby steps, these little milestones. And so I just want you to focus on 5%, just 5% more intentional with the way that you're engaging, with the way that you're interacting. How could that change? How could that change things for you? Okay. You can take a minute, you can pause me, you can write this down, and then start me up again. Okay. I just want you to really get a clear sense of how speaking with intention can truly change your interactions. Okay. So this is why we've been struggling, why we struggle with communication, because we're winging it. We don't have a practice. We don't speak with intention. We don't feel like there's purpose to our interactions. And so that's what we want to bring to it. We want to bring intention to our language, and we want to bring purpose to our dialogue. Okay. So you might be thinking, great, this all sounds well and good, but I don't think there is really anything that can really help me become more intentional and be more responsive, and in not only difficult interactions, but just in smaller moments as well, right? Maybe it's far too gone. Maybe I'm far too gone. And what I'm about to show you is that it truly is possible. And I also want to mention too, that some students will be like, is this going to change my personality? No, this does not change your personality. It doesn't mute your personality. What this work does is it actually enhances who you are, and it makes it so that you shine even brighter without it being forced, right? You are able to show up authentically as yourself, and other people understand it and other people appreciate it, as opposed to where it might feel like now, where it has to be pushed onto somebody, right? So what this work does is it enhances who you are. It actually shows the world more of who you are. And it's beautiful, right? It just makes it easier for others then to understand who you are through this work. So how is it possible to get your interactions back on track, even if you think it's too late? This is what I want to show you now. I want to show you how it's really possible. Okay. So to explain a little bit about why your interactions, your relationships may feel like they're a bit unstable and they may feel far too gone, I want to share with you this cycle of reactivity. And this is the key to really understanding what it is that you're doing now. Okay. So what happens is you are in interaction, you are in dialogue, and somebody said something to you. And the moment that someone says something, or the moment that an event happens, it goes directly to your heart, right? It hits your heart. It's like it pierces you, right? And it hurts. And in that moment, though it's happening so quickly, right? In that moment, you could be feeling stupid. You could be feeling misunderstood. You could be feeling invisible. You could be feeling guilty. You could be feeling stupid. You could be feeling, confused. You could be feeling all sorts of things. But what happens is somebody saying something, it's like boom, right to your heart. And so because you're hurting in that moment, you want to protect yourself. So you go into protection mode, and your protection mode is basically what ends up happening is your default reaction, right? So maybe you move into anger, maybe you move to frustration, maybe you move to passive aggressive behavior, maybe you start lashing out, maybe you, start dodging or making excuses, right? Whatever you identified before as your default reaction, the likelihood is that this is the cycle, right? Someone says something, somebody does something, boom, straight to the heart. I need to protect myself, boom, right? And it's happening so fast that we don't even know it. We don't even recognize what's going on, okay? But once you understand this and have the awareness, it can really help you break the cycle of what normally happens so that you can create a different type of interaction, right? You can create different types of relationships. So what's happening right now is this. It's this event plus reaction equals outcome, right? So oftentimes what we end up focusing more on is the event, the thing that happened, what the person said. Why didn't they say this? Why did they say this? I can't believe they said that, right? That's where all of our attention goes. Our attention there, though, is not helpful because nothing can change. What the person said, they can't take it back. We can't unhear it. What they did, they can't undo it. We can't unreceive it, let's just say, right? So pretty much what we want to focus on is we want to focus on the second piece, because if we want a different outcome from the way that we're interacting, we have to change our reaction to it, meaning we have to move out of reactivity and we have to move into response. So the difference here, reactivity happens automatically, it's automatic. Becoming more responsive means everything slows down. You have time to think about how you want to engage, right? You get to choose. Whereas with reaction, you don't. It's just that automatic cycle we talked about. So what we want to focus on here is just the idea that we can change the outcome. We can change the way that things unfold if we ourselves are able to change the way that we are engaging, right? So just jot down on your piece of paper the first thought that comes to mind when you hear these following words, okay? When you hear the words late meeting, what comes to mind? Just jot it down, okay? Again, you can pause me if you want. What do you think of first when you hear the words, I need to see you? Or can we talk? Or text at 11 p.m.? Okay, the first thought that comes to mind when you hear those. And then I want you to look over them and I want you to think, is it always what you think it is? Right? Probably not, right? It doesn't have to be the way that we think it is, right? Automatically. What I want you to be able to see here is that our automatic reactions are not always the way it is, right? So you have a choice about feeling the way you do or not, right? So this gets me into really what we want to be doing instead, this alternative that I'm talking about, this practice that I'm talking about. And this is really what it looks like, right? Somebody says something, somebody does something, and the first thing that happens is now the focus is on the sensation in the body. What is happening in your body in that moment, right? Is your heart beating really fast? Are your palms sweating? Is your throat closing up? Like, do you just feel like you're kind of contracted completely? Some people will say it's like I've been punched in the stomach, right? You know the sensation of when someone says something or somebody does something and it doesn't sit right. It's just right now things are happening so quickly that our work is to truly slow it down so we can begin to really notice, okay, this is the first thing I need to pay attention to. My body, what's happening in my body. Then I need to move my attention to how I'm talking to myself in that moment. Right now, with the automatic reaction, it's happening so quickly, we don't even notice it. But what we are saying in our mind is we are focused on the other person. So we are saying, I can't believe that person just said that. I'm so surprised that they think that of me. We're making assumptions in our head. We're creating stories in our head, all the things that we may not know to even be true, right? So instead, what we want to do is we want to start talking to ourselves differently in that moment, because the sensation that's happening in the body is happening because you are hurt in some way. You have been pierced in your heart and you are hurt, right? And so it requires that voice to come out. And instead of being blaming and criticizing and resentful, it's coming out to basically soothe yourself, to be able to say, okay, you've got this. You're okay. Right now, you're just feeling stupid right now. You're just feeling insecure right now. You're just feeling invisible right now. And it's okay. We've got this, right? That's the second step. Then you move into the present moment. You take a deep breath. You ask yourself, what are my hands doing? What are my feet doing? What's my belly doing, right? You access the present moment. You take a deep breath. That way you get to access yourself. So then you can see clearly. You can think clearly, right? It takes a while, like basically our reactionary self is in the limbic system, right? And we need to get up here to the prefrontal cortex, which is like the logic and reason. So it takes us a little while to go from back here to up here, right? That's what we need to give ourselves in these moments. We need to give ourselves time and space so that we can begin to see clearly how we want to engage. So then only after that can you look at the other person and you can see clearly to be able to say, I want to be helpful to this person. I want to be kind with this person. I want to listen to this person. I want to show them that I understand where they're coming from. And I also want to be able to express myself in a way that they can hear me. So you turn toward them. And then that's number 4. And then number 5 is when you actually speak. Okay. So there is so much that has to happen before words come out of your mouth. And again, this is not something that we're ever taught, right? So don't beat yourself up for this, okay? Because this isn't a practice that we're taught, which is why I'm sharing it with you now. And when I figured this out, it was like, ta-da, everything began to shift because I was really able to be in control again of my language. Again, I would say for the first time ever, really in control of the words that were coming out of my mouth in difficult interactions, yes. During confrontation, yes, but also in the moments where I wanted to ask for something or I needed something, I was truly able to express myself easily, right? Where before, I was the person who had to write everything down on a piece of paper and give it to people for them to understand. It took me, I was at a company for 13 years and I asked for a raise once, right? Like the inability to express myself was real. And with this practice came ease. So this is really what the practice is. Listening to yourself, listening to others, speaking consciously, clearly, and concisely, using silence in your speech, not right now what silence may look like, which maybe it feels like it's to push away or to manipulate or to punish. Really using silence in this way is to give yourself the space that you need to be able to see whether the conversation is moving into hurtful territory. And if you need to move it back, it's giving you that space to be able to access yourself to know how you want to show up, how you want to engage, if what you have to say is necessary. It's there for you to just be able to it's a way for you to check yourself in your interactions to make sure that you're showing up in a way that you respect. And then meditation. So really this is, sitting with yourself for 5 to 10 minutes and giving yourself that space that you need. So if you aren't listening to yourself, what happens is what doesn't happen is you're not going to be able to know what it is that you want and what it is that you need. So you're not going to be able to ask for it in a way that others can hear you. If you're not listening to yourself, you will continue to be and exist in those states of suffering. You will continue to move to your default reactions because you're not going to know that they are happening, right? And if you aren't listening to yourself, then that means that the way that you are showing up with others is likely a reflection of how you're feeling about yourself, right? So if you are upset with yourself in the morning for getting out of the house late, and you are at work, all of that frustration at yourself for getting out of the house late is going to come out in your interactions that day, right? Though if you are able to see the frustration, understand that you're talking to yourself in a way that is creating more of that frustration, change the way that you're connecting with yourself in that moment, it means that you then show up with others differently, right? Because you're showing up no longer frustrated at yourself, but more accepting and allowing of what just happened and understanding, okay, the past is the past. I can't change that. I can only move forward, and here we go, right? So without listening to yourself, all of that won't happen. Without listening to others, there is no conversation. It's impossible to have a conversation without listening to other people, right? Because all it becomes is either it becomes all about you winning a conversation or the other person winning the conversation. And it's not about clarity, it's about competition, right? The other piece, if we're not listening to others, is there's no way for us to be able to understand another person's perspective. We will not be able to be in interactions and have different points of view and have that be more of a conversation starter as opposed to it being like something that doesn't allow the conversation to even move forward, right? So listening to others, if we're not listening to others, we're also not present, right? We are completely distracted and we are caught up in our, it's like the I, me, my kind of language where everything is I related or my related or me related. It's like the me plan, right? Which makes it really difficult to be accessible to other people, right? When we are not listening to others, we don't show that we are available for other people, that we are there for other people. If at any time somebody has said that it's really difficult to talk to you, there's a reason for that, right? And it's possible that the environment that you're creating for someone else is not an environment that makes it easy for them to show up in, right? Which is possibly because you aren't listening, right? And if we aren't speaking consciously, clearly, and concisely, then we make it really difficult for people to understand what we're saying, or we make it really difficult for people to hear us, right? Because again, then we're just saying anything that we're thinking, we're saying anything that comes out of our mouth, and we're not really giving much thought to if it's kind, if it's helpful, if it's honest, if it's necessary. And we're also not giving ourselves enough time to understand what is it that we actually want from this situation? What is it that I need? What is the purpose of me having a conversation with this person, right? Without speaking clearly, we use a lot of vague language, and vague language causes a lot of confusion, right? And even though we may think we're being really specific and we maybe think we're being clear, we really want to test that, right? If you say, I need this from you ASAP, ASAP to you might mean in an hour, but to somebody else, it could mean 5 p.m., right? So you want to start being really specific so that there's no way for somebody to misunderstand you. And it's the same thing with being concise. It's easy to explain too much. It's easy to say so many things. But the more we say, the less one-pointed focus we have, meaning the easier it is to distract somebody else, right? So we want to speak just very concisely, very to the point, direct, but in a compassionate way. Silence. If there is no silence in our interactions, then you are not checking your interactions, basically. You're not giving space for more intimacy, more collaboration, more, chance to really grow and to make sure that you're keeping the integrity of the conversation intact. And without meditation, what meditation really helps you do, it helps you focus on one thing at a time. It helps you access the present moment, and it helps you become more responsive instead of reactive. And so what it's really helping you to do is it's helping you in those moments to understand what is distracting you, like what is a distraction and unhelpful, and how you can just be able to say, oh, thanks for sharing, and come back to the present moment and begin again, right? It helps you access the present moment when you are in interactions, so that you can listen and you can have a conversation, right? You can listen to yourself, you can listen to others and have a real conversation. So before this practice, what things could look like, it could look like, your partner asks you if you should really be eating that, and you react by wrapping up the burrito and throwing it in the trash, saying, is that what you want? Your partner is not happy, you're not happy, nobody feels good, right? States of suffering. Or after the practice, it could look like your partner asks you if you should really be eating that, and instead you pause, you don't take it personally, you respond by saying, you could be right, and it's really good, and you continue eating. And the outcome is your partner is just as they were, and you're just as you were, right? No states of suffering there. So what I want you to see is that you really have a choice. You have a choice in how you communicate, right? And the beautiful thing is that this is a learned behavior. So because it's a learned behavior, that means you have the opportunity now to learn a new way to interact so that you can. So I just want to break this down a little bit more so that you can see how you can begin to apply this practice. So listening to yourself really means starting to pay attention to your language. How you're talking to yourself, is it in a way that promotes more suffering, that's hurtful, that creates more fear, more anxiety, more stress? How you're talking to yourself about those that you work with, how you're talking to yourself about your children, your partner, right? Really beginning to pay attention to the language that you're using that is causing more, like more doubt, more worry, more fear, those states of suffering, okay? Then you also want to start to pay attention to your body. So really paying attention to the sensation in the body, to understand what happens to you in those moments where you go into your default reaction, because those moments are your cue to start doing something differently. So you want to start paying attention to the sensation in the body in those difficult moments, right? And you want to start to pay attention to your emotions, really kind of understanding a little bit more, what am I feeling in that moment, right? Things right now are happening so quickly, but if I were to stop and slow it down, when I get passive aggressive, what am I really feeling in that moment, right? And then moving into listening to others, really starting to be present in your interactions, really seeing if you can see from the other person's perspective, accepting what's true, which can be really difficult, because if somebody is saying, the way that you shared that feedback with me felt really hurtful. And for you, instead of defending it or explaining it, for you to just be able to say, you're right. Right? The way that I did say that, it was hurtful, right? The way that I said that, there was judgment in it. Yes. To be able to own that, it's so liberating, though it is difficult to do, right? And also with listening to others, to really see, is there a way that you can be helpful, right? How can I be helpful to this person? Speaking consciously, clearly, and concisely. This is really all about slowing down. We have to slow down these interactions so that we can start to show up and speak with intention, right? Really learning to say only what's necessary. And this requires thought, right? This requires thought to be able to say, is what I have to say kind? Is it honest? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? And then starting to get really specific with your language, right? Instead of, I need this by the end of the day, it's, I need this by 4:30 p.m., right? Instead of, let's meet next week, it becomes, you take more time, you slow everything down so that you actually know, okay, I want to meet next Tuesday at 12:30, right? And if that doesn't work, can you send me 3 days and times that do work? You get really, really specific, right? Silence, to start bringing silence into your conversations, you want to start adding pauses. You want to create gaps, okay? And you will start to notice right away that when you do this, you will create space within your conversations for you to be able to think and for you to be able to decide how you want to engage. And then the last piece, right, is meditation. And this is really all it is like sitting for 5 to 10 minutes. You're going to pick one thing to focus on, your breath, a word, a sound. And anytime your attention leaves that point of focus, you're just going to say, thanks for sharing. Thanks so much. And bring your attention back to your point of focus. Okay. Those are really the pieces. That's truly the breakdown. Okay. So now I just want to get into a little bit about why it only takes one person to change a conversation. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, all well and good. I could be rescued in terms of the way that I'm interacting. My communication can be transformed. I like the methodology. Maybe things aren't too far gone for me. I can get things back on track. But what happens if other people are not speaking in this way, right? Is it possible for me to be the only one showing up in this way and still get the outcomes that I'm looking for, right? Or still be able to have more calm and ease within these interactions than I've had before. And this is one of the number one things that, students really fear in the beginning, is if they're the only one connecting in this way, is it really possible for things to be different? And I'm here to show you that it is possible, because it only really takes one person to change the conversation. And I'm going to prove that to you now. And then there's really no excuse for you not to transform your communication and start to connect in this more intentional way, right? So I'm going to show you a scientific experiment so that you can see that I'm not just saying this, but it is scientifically proven. Okay, and this is the tuning fork experiment, and maybe you're familiar with it. If you're not, you can go to YouTube and look it up. It's really fascinating. This is the resonance between tuning forks. So what happens is one tuning fork is struck and it vibrates at a certain vibration. And then that vibration, it sends, like, basically the vibration is sent through the air and the air molecules to the second tuning fork. And it causes the second tuning fork to vibrate at that same frequency. So if you look on the YouTube experiment, it's really neat because they have one tuning fork, they hit it, the vibration goes, then they just bring over this other one, and the other one starts vibrating at the same frequency. And it's beautiful, because what it shows you is energy is transferable, right? So here's the thing, like attracts like. So everything produces after its own kind. So I attract calm because I'm calm. I attract laughter because I laugh. I attract easy interactions because I am confident and I'm concise, right? So have you ever been in a really bad mood and you go somewhere and there's somebody who's in a really great mood, right? And just by talking to them, your mood starts to change, right? Or you could maybe have experienced the opposite, where you're in like a really great mood and you get home or you get into work and somebody there is in a completely, like a down mood, and your vibration just drops completely, right? Your mood goes down. It's the same idea, right? If somebody's talking really fast, maybe you start talking faster. If somebody's going really slowly, maybe you go really slowly, right? So remember when I mentioned I used to be super passive aggressive? This is me, super passive aggressive, extremely dissatisfied and frustrated. And guess what I experience more of? Right? I experience more dissatisfaction. I experience more unhappiness, more opportunities to be passive aggressive and angry. And, so if you start showing up differently in your interactions, right, within your relationships, others cannot connect with you in the same way, because they have to change the way that they are reacting to you, because you are not showing up in the same way that you've been showing up. So they have to change their response to you. They basically have to rise to meet you, right? Because you're doing something different, they have to do something different too. And it's really fun to watch, because sometimes it just stumps people, because you change how you're engaging and they've never had that before. So they then get to take a pause and get to actually stop, slow things down for themselves and think, how do I want to respond to that? So in a way, you're modeling the behavior and you're teaching the behavior at the same time. Okay. But so how do you show up differently? How do you change how you're showing up in your interactions? So right now, I want you to just choose. I want you to choose how you want to be in your interactions with others, right? Decide what type of boss you want to be, what type of partner you want to be, what type of colleague, what type of friend you want to be, right? What type of relationships do you want? What type of person do you want to be in these relationships? And I want you to decide that right now, right? Do you want to be supportive? Do you want to be honest? Do you want to be accessible? Do you want to be energized? Do you want to be, right? Like what type of boss, partner, colleague, friend, however you want to put this in, right? Like whatever box you want to put this in, I want you to decide how you want to show up, right? What type of relationships you want, what type of person you want to be in these relationships. And I want you to write it down, right? It's really important that you write it down and you don't just think about it, because there is something true about the moment that we write something down, it becomes real. Okay. So please write it down. You can pause me, think about it, and write it down. Okay. The second way that you change how you're showing up is every morning to set your intention, right? To set your intention to be what you just decided you were going to be. So to set your intention to be kind, to be honest, to be helpful, to help yourself and others suffer less, to say only what's necessary, to really feel into the person that you want to be in these relationships, right? Every morning before I get out of bed, I set this intention. I set my intention to, to be patient with my children on the days that I want to be more patient. I set the intention to be, nurturing towards my partner. I set the intention to be present in my work. I set the intention to, be supportive of my staff. I set the intention to be energetic, like on social media. I don't know, but I'm saying, right, like it's really important to set the intention, because that becomes almost like your thesis statement for the day, so that you begin to see very easily, oh, I'm being really impatient right now. I'm starting to interrupt people. I'm starting to get cranky. That's not my intention for the day. Thanks so much for showing up to remind me that it's my time to come back to my intention, which is to practice patience. So if I'm practicing patience in this moment, what does that look like, right? And then the next piece that you're going to do is you're going to, every night before bed, write down 3 things that you are grateful for or that you appreciate, right? About yourself, about your life, about your team, about your partner, about your children, but only like 3 things that you appreciate, right? And this is so that you begin to focus more on that which you do have as opposed to that which you don't have, right? And the more that we begin to shift our attention towards that which we do have, the more of what we have grows, right? And so we begin to cultivate more of that good, right? Moving us out of what we talked about in the beginning, the states of suffering. Okay. So this is how you begin to change how you're showing up in your interactions. So truly, it embodies this, right? Be the change that you wish to see in the world. So you get this beautiful opportunity. I'm going to stop sharing right now. You get this beautiful opportunity right now to transform your communication, to show up differently than you ever have shown up before, and to see the different outcomes that come from it, right? To see how much more connection you can create, how much more freedom you can feel, how much more energy you have. And the wonderful piece is that it's your choice, right? You have the ability to choose, and you have the ability to practice something different so that others can begin to model that behavior as well, right? So I'm hopeful that this, well, I hope that this is helpful for you. I hope that you got a lot out of today's talk, and that you feel like you can put some things into action and begin practicing right away. I know it's possible for you to change your interactions. I've done it. I'm like patient zero here. I've done it. I've helped so many other people do it. So I know that you can too. And I just want to say that your words are valuable and what you have to say is necessary. And I am looking forward to connecting with you on the live Q&A. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Bye. Mwah.